The state of React Native 2023 is out 7 months ago. It's a survey for React Native developers about the ecosystem. It basically determines what I wish my tech stack looked like last year, but they say the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is now. This is the second year of the survey with 2,500 responses compared to last year at 2,000 responses. For demographics, most respondents are over the age of 25 with an average experience of 2+ years in React Native, but 4+ years total. And we have a huge sausage fest of 95% of the respondents being male, but 35.2% didn't respond, so we can still have hope. Most of the respondents came from the United States, India, and Europe. What's surprising is only 3% make more than 200K, and about 50% make less than 100K per year. So it's going to take a little bit more work before Lambo. Most developers seem to come from React. The second and third are either front-end or back-end developers, which means they come from any coding background. What is wild is 1/3 of the respondents are open source contributors, which is absolutely insane. Enormous open source community. And 1 out of 12 React Native developers contribute to React Native Core. So for context, there's 2,662 contributors for React Native Core, and it's used by 1.8 million people. For comparison, React Core, there is 1,656 contributors, and it's used by 22.7 million people. So for React Native, there's a huge open source community, meaning problems will get fixed, which makes me optimistic for the future of React Native. Most developers work on finance, education, and entertainment. The operating system targeted is usually a reasonably current one. Most developers target Android and iOS, with very few targeting web, which makes sense. But this number will probably increase as tools get better for web development. Most respondents are using a Mac at a pretty insane level, good for that iOS development on Xcode, I'm assuming. Most developers are coding on a team between 1 and 5. All right, let's get into features. So state management is absolutely popping off. React Hooks is strong in the force, and the retention is high and is my go-to tool. The cool kids on the block are Tanstack Query and Zoostan, which seem to be looking real nice. And Redux is basically getting the axe, as a lot of people would not use it again. For data fetching, I personally just use Fetch API for everything, but apparently Tanstack Query is poggers, so planning to use that in the future. On a side note, tRPC also looks great and has a lot of GIF substars, and people seem to like it. And for UI component libraries, there's been a lot of changes. I personally just use Stylesheet API, and that's simply because of the speed. Native Wind is awesome, especially if you're coming from React and using Tailwind. It's basically Tailwind for React Native, very easy to use. Tamagui is the styling cool kid on the block, especially if you are looking to develop on the web, as well as iOS and Android, as the components are universal. Unistyle seems interesting, but honestly, I don't know too much about it. So for animation, Reanimated is apparently the GOAT. Best for event handling, animations, and calculations. At least that's what I learned from Reddit. And if you're doing any type of drawing, use Skia. Also, I've used React Native Lottie for animated SVGs, but honestly, I don't even know what a Lottie is, though I would love to win the lottery. Debugging. Honestly, I just console log everything. Those are my people. Flipper seems cool, apparently, so I might look into that. So for React Native features, an important update to keep in mind is that React Native new architecture, which is coming out in late 2024. Basically, it's a lot of upgrades for React Native for performance and speed. I'm a sheep following the herd, so I hear the words new, and I assume new is better, although it doesn't seem to be recommended to implement at the moment, just FYI. For deployment, it seems EAS build and EAS submit are gaining traction. They will only be getting better. That being said, I'm basically a caveman, so I manually upload. EAS build costs money after 30 uploads, and I have so many errors uploading personally, this usually isn't enough. And as we looked at the React Native salaries previously, I might manually upload for eternity. Fastlane seems legit for automating your build launches, but I personally haven't used it yet. The React Native alternatives are pretty obvious. SwiftUI for native iOS and Jetpack Kotlin are great for native Android, basically. Flutter is a strong contender, but why learn Dart when you already know JS? Simon Grimm just came out with a good video explaining the differences between Flutter and React Native if you're trying to make a decision on which to use. We seem to be in the React Native renaissance. These are the good old days of React Native we are currently living in, and most likely you are also living in your good old days, but you won't realize it until they have passed. You'll look back on these moments wishing you appreciated them more when you're old and retired.